Guys, we're going to rock and roll today on a Tuesday. Looking forward to connecting with you guys through this platform. The distinguished gentleman is in the house, the man who needs little introduction. And we met some of his beautiful family on Friday in a very communal and love-based edition of Real Talk. Today's the Tuesday morning edition of Real Talk. How you feeling? How was your weekend? How about I ask that question? How was your weekend?
Well, we were full of two daughters, two grandkids. We've been empty nesters for a while, and it's always great for them to come into the house. But when you hit a certain age, you kind of like to have things in certain locations and so forth and so on. And when little tornadoes run through the house, it's like, okay, well, hold it. I know I just put this down right here.
I know what that's like.
And so what happens with that is you tend to forget about it for a while, and then all of a sudden it comes back. But absolutely loved it. Can't wait for them to come back and spend time with us. It was a surprise for Yvonne to fly in from Seattle, and it was a great time. And you had the women's 4-miler, which I'm going to ask you about here.
We did. Very shortly.
Sure.
This gentleman is Keith Smith of Yes Realty Partners. My name is Jerry Miller. This show airs on the I Love Seville network. It's presented by Yes Realty Partners. It's powered by Interstate Pest Control. Realtors out there, if you need a solution. If you need a solution, Interstate Pest and Service Companies is a home's best friend. J-Dubs, my friend, mi amigo, my pal, my chum. We can rock and roll when you're ready. Good Tuesday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk, an insider's guide to real estate, life, and the pursuit of happiness. We're live across Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love Seville network. The show is presented by Yes Realty Partners. Trusted name in the game, Yes Realty Partners will help you navigate the buying and selling process. Homes, commercial real estate, trusted advisors, Yes Realty Partners. We also thank Interstate Pest and Service Companies, a home's best friend, for being a part of the show. Interstate Pest and Service Companies has been helping customers, families, realtors, agents alike also get their homes ready for buying and selling. Judah Wickower is our director. Why don't we go to the studio camera, my friend, Judah Wickower, and let's welcome the star of the program. Not only the star, not only the executive producer, but the director of casting. The casting director.
I got that title on Friday, apparently.
You got that title on Friday.
From my daughter who's in the biz.
That's right. She said, Dad, you want that title.
She told me to tell you she's shooting tomorrow. She's getting her PCR test this morning.
Oh, fantastic.
They get a PCR test almost every day.
Well, she did a heck of a job. Harry, if you're watching, I enjoyed spending some time with you. Harry Tyson, you are A-plus people. How was the women's 4-miler? You had two daughters and a wife in there.
I did, but I was babysitting. So on the Yes Realty Partners, one of our other things we could do is watch grandchildren and watch babies.
Two of them.
We had two, but Harry was helping me.
Okay.
So there was a 2.5-year-old. If you think of 2.5-year-olds, this fellow was a 2.5-year-old, and then our 8-month-old granddaughter, who, I'm a bit smitten with. She's my. I shouldn't say it out loud, but yeah, we love her. And every time you walk into the room, she just smiles, and it's the perfect age. 6 to 8 months is the perfect age. And they start walking, then they get into the terrible tools, which you wouldn't know anything about. The good news about that is you forget about it real fast.
Yeah,
you forget about it real fast.
So, Keith Smith.
The three girls ran together. It was a lot of fun. They raised. I haven't figured out how much money they raised, but Mark and Ragged Money Running Shop and the Lorazoni family always do a great job.
Yes, they do.
Little different this year. Most people might not know this. It was run entirely on Foxfield grounds. So it was not a road race like one would think traditionally, but it was more like the old cross-country race when you were in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of thing. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. They sent a lot of pictures. They were supposed to come right home, but they didn't. So I think the ladies went out for breakfast, and they didn't bring us any bagels back from Bodo's, but it's okay.
Quentin says, what age is a certain age? Keith Smith.
What age is a certain age?
Yeah.
Maybe my age is a certain age. I don't know, but yeah. Once you hit a certain age, let's say empty nesters. We happen to be young empty nesters because, frankly, we started early. And it's funny. We were having this conversation with the girls over the weekend. Most folks are now having children in their early 30s, mid 30s. We had them in our early 20s. And it's great to be almost 60, and you've got the whole house. You can travel. I think if I was 20 years older than now and had a bunch of grandbabies, it'd be hard to get around and see them and stuff.
We have a lot we want to cover today.
We do. So I want to give a shout out. Just to kick it off, what I love about Friday's Batman and Robin is we just kick out a topic or two and then see how it goes and see where the feed takes in. But I want to give a shout out, and if you can tag her, that would be great, to Nicole Scrow.
I will.
And also Livable Charlottesville. So if anybody follows Nicole on Twitter, she's been doing something along with this Livable Charlottesville, which caught my eye over the weekend, which I thought was pretty interesting. What they're doing is they're asking folks to send in pictures of homes in Charlottesville that are either duplexes or triplexes or quads. And I'm sure Judah didn't have enough time to send it because I put it up on the screen, but I did a quick little Google search, and it's interesting. If one does a Google search and just like searches between 1900 and 1920, duplexes and tries and all this stuff, you'll find pictures of homes that look just like Belmont. You would not even know they're duplexes on that end of it. So I think what they're trying to do, and I commend them and applaud them from doing it, is to show this is not going to be this huge, massive structures on that end of it. We talk about this all the time, going down a couple of shows ago, going down to Cape Charles, which was built in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, and almost every other house is a duplex. And if you Google Cape Charles, they look just like Belmont. They're literally the classic 1910, 1920, what we would call in the business the four squares. You just didn't know that there was either side by side, or what that was very popular back in those days is an over-under, which is coming back. So this kind of goes into this category of what's old is new again, right? So it's really interesting. A simple Google search would show it, and I apologize to Jude, I didn't give you enough time to go ahead and post some of them on the screen. But if you have an opportunity, the Terramount, yeah. Just run through some of the ones that are older. You'll see newspaper cuttings, but these were actually prefabricated houses or pre-cut houses from Sears that came down on the railroad. So if you actually look at this, I don't know which one it is. I didn't label it, but it's Terramount, Tremont. If you look at that house, it's exactly the same house as my sister's house on Belmont that we helped them sell a couple of years ago. Literally looks exactly the same, but it's a duplex. You wouldn't know the difference of it.
So duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, added density for the city. That's a lot of folks' push, certainly Livable Charlottesville's push, Keith Smith.
Sure. And folks, I guess what I appreciated from Nicole Scrow's post and Livable Charlottesville, they were showing examples of it. And if you do a little bit more homework, which I decided on this topic early this morning, so I didn't take a deep dive into it. I wanted to kind of see what the feed would pounce back and see how the conversation goes. But if you take a quick little history lesson on that, particularly God love Google. It's great for, when you need to double check your sources, of course. But that's the reason they were doing it in the early 20s, between 1900 and the 1920s, is because they had a housing shortage, just like they have now. and hats off to you, because you've coined this, and I think you're going to be right, that once we get on the other side of this COVID, which I don't think is going to be anytime soon, but when we get on the other side of this, completely beat this, I think you're going to see this Roaring '20s mentality come back.
Oh, no doubt. I think we're starting to see that with a lot of the restaurants now. Like Keith said, we need to get through this Delta variant. Like Keith also said, with almost every college in America hosting college football games over the weekend, packed stadiums all over the country, flu season around the corner, kids back in school, and then the Labor Day weekend now behind us, where families all over the country are gathering. Hey, the Smiths gathering together. We're not doom and gloom. We're realists. We're optimists. But I would think the expectation would be potentially a spike this month. I think that's safe to say, right?
Mrs. Smith didn't raise a dummy. I'm pretty sure. There will be. I know enough this much about science from when the little bit I went to actually showed
you know
up.
a lot.
Well, the last 2 years of high school I worked. I never actually showed up and got a diploma. Just decided to make money instead of dealing with that. But that was a whole late 1970s thing on that end of it. They were just handing out diplomas with somebody who had a pulse. But the reality of it is that if you read a little bit on it, and I'm an avid reader, this Pale Rider book, which I let you read, on that end of it, what got everybody in the 1918 Spanish flu wasn't 1918's variant, it was 1919 and 1920's variant. So that took about 3 years to cycle through, and they didn't have the stuff we've got, right? It just killed people is how it got to herd immunity, to be frank with you, on that end of it. So, I think you're gonna have to address this missing middle. I feel strong about it. This is something that people kind of question sometimes why I put this out there so publicly. It's because I believe in it. It worked in the 1910s and 1920s, right? Why wouldn't it work now? And these houses that if Judah's good enough to flip through, I hope he can make it, you drive down Belmont, they look like that. And some of the pictures I sent Judah early this morning is some of them that were sent that Nicole Scrow has done and Livable Charlottesville. You really wouldn't know that they were duplexes or triplexes or quads, unless you have an eye for it. But most people will walk down the street and never know.
Mustache and Pettit, how about the Virginia Supportive Housing for Charlottesville? Where do people go that are getting pushed out? He's talking about the crossings in Charlottesville.
Sure.
We had a guest yesterday on the I Love Seville show, Gwendolyn Cassidy, who's a proponent of villas, and how Anthony Haro taught us.
Sure.
How do you solve homelessness?
You put them in houses.
Go
figure, huh?
Imagine that.
Imagine that. So I'm lucky enough to have lunch with her next week. Love to hear what she's doing. But I've followed some veteran projects in different states and different cities, Minneapolis being one of them. And I think, if I remember correctly, I didn't have the opportunity to watch the show. I was a little tied up at the time, but I'll do it later. It was, it's pretty simple. There's just these little tiny homes. The struggle is going to be getting through zoning, right? So the problem is, because we don't have this zoning allowance within this quote-unquote missing middle or allowing that, it gets a little difficult. To be honest with you, it's probably going to get pushed out to the edge of the city or the edge of the urban ring, which is not helping anybody, because now how are they going to get from there to work and resources and stuff like that? But as you know, I've been pushing for years trying to do something with the IGA property on Cherry Avenue. Something like that would be absolutely perfect on there, but we just can't get it. Can't get it bought for the right price. Jackson
Kraling has an interesting comment that's come up before on the show. Jackson, we appreciate when you watch the program. Jackson, where are you watching? I believe it's Crozet. Let me know. It may be Afton. Please let me know, Jackson, in the feed. He says this, gentlemen, why not allow the market to do what the market does? Charlottesville City and Albemarle County look like they're destined to be areas for wealthy, and the surrounding counties look like areas for affordability.
So So try that question a different way, because I want to make sure I understand before I answer it.
So let me see if I can paraphrase for you, Jackson. If I'm speaking out of turn, let me know again, please. He's basically saying the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, clearly more wealthy from a price point standpoint, housing price point standpoint, than some of the outer counties in Central Virginia.
Okay.
Why not just allow the market to continue doing what it's doing, where Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville have higher price points and the surrounding counties have price points that are more approachable and affordable?
So are we suggesting removing zoning altogether? Is that what we're suggesting?
No, I think he's just saying let's let the market do what the market's going to do.
Well, the market is doing what the market is going to do, right? It is doing it. I brought some stats here. For the first time in the last 7 days, we ended up on par. Actually, we've got 92 homes that came on, and not quite, but 94 went off. Last 24 hours, it was 15 came on, 14 went off. So, the market is always done its thing. I think the question might be, is exclusionary zoning impeding the market? That's how I would ask that question. So exclusionary zoning was started in the 20s, and it started pushing, pretty much after these homes that we've been talking about, late 20s, early 30s, and if Neil's watching, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but that the zoning ordinance started pushing it out. Now, I saw something on Facebook, and I'm probably going to get myself into trouble.
Okay.
So bail me out if I do.
I always try.
Always try. Sometimes don't succeed, but I always try. One of the things is there's kicking around the idea of turning Crozet into a town, right? And that's great. If that's what everybody wants to do, the process is pretty laborious, but there is a path there that one can go ahead and do that.
And let them know why Crozet some in Crozet want to be a town.
Because I think they want to control
more autonomy.
They want more autonomy, but what they really want to do is control the zoning, and that's what would allow them to do that.
So a large portion of Crozet is frustrated that so much zoning, so much density is in Crozet.
Yeah.
You got two ways to get in Crozet. You got 64 in the bypass. When one of them is impeded because of an accident, it becomes a real cluster to get in and out of Crozet.
It's the same as Lake Monticello.
Same as Lake Monticello.
There's 3 ways in and out.
Old Trail is also extremely dense right now.
It's also affluent.
It's also very affluent.
Wrong word.
So the old guard, or not even the old guard, even some of the new guard wants to potentially pivot to a town, which then could control Crozet, its density,
Sure.
and limit or allow people to move in and out of the town if they make that move.
So we have if those who are interested in this topic, we got 2 experts coming in on Friday, Neil Williamson and Sean Tubbs.
Woo! Love those guys.
And I intend to actually ask this question of them. So if they're watching, that's coming your way, talk to me about what that means. How does that work? I know how it works. I just wanted to see if he can explain it. But the simple analogy of it is just a simple search through the state code. You have to go through a meets and bounds. You have to get so many people to sign it. There is a process to go through, and it has to be granted by the state, because everything comes from the state down here in Virginia, right, because of Dillon rule. But it is conceivable they could possibly do that. It might be super expensive for the people that live in Old Trail, because not only will they'll be paying 3 times, right?
Yeah.
They'll be paying an Albemarle County tax, right? They'll be paying a now town tax, assuming that they incorporate Old Trail into it, which you would almost have to raise the revenue to do what you have to do. And you would have
they'd have to incorporate Old Trail.
You'd have to. You need the density to do
right.
it. And then you would, and I used the D word, look at that. And you would have a town tax, HOA tax, HOA fee on that end of it. So it could be substantially expensive.
Well, I learned this from our Scottsville roundtable last week. You know what the #1 revenue generator is for the town of Scottsville?
I'm going to take a stab at property tax, but I may be wrong.
It's the meals tax.
Oh, okay. I get
the
it.
meals tax, the #1 generator.
Got it.
For the town of Scottsville.
So and I don't know this.
The real estate taxes, I believe, go to Albemarle County.
So that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, and not the town of Scottsville.
But they can collect their own real estate tax.
But they do not do that.
They do not
in the
do
town of Scottsville.
So Scottsville would not be a good comparison to what one is thinking in Crozet.
Why do you say that? Actually, that's a hell of a show.
Yeah.
Comparing the town of Scottsville and how it goes about running its jurisdiction in its town to what Crozet could or could not do if it chooses to pivot to be a town.
Then you work in the used to be town of Columbia, right? Used to be a town. It was one vote away from being the state capital. At least that's the rumor.
And the cigarette tax is
Sure.
another revenue generator for the town of Scottsville.
Sure. Well, it's a cigarette tax, but that's going to be managed by the commission, planning district commission. But ultimately, the local jurisdictions have the right. It's an interesting. Absolutely. We're gonna take a dive into that a little bit in the second half of this month in October, because we're going to be bringing in a couple Albemarle County folks, candidates. Charlottesville candidates, and particularly the Albemarle folks. So tell us what that looks like on that end of it. I think it's doable, right? Anything is doable. Somebody's going to have to really take the horse by the reins. I think if I said that right, but that's a tremendous amount of money, tremendous amount of work to go ahead and get it done. And I'm not so sure they'll be able to raise the amount of money and the signatures, and then you have to convince the state that this is a good thing. I remember because I was part of the dissolution of Columbia, and that took years.
Let them know where Columbia is. A lot of folks don't know this.
Yeah, so the town of Columbia is in Fluvanna County on the James River. Way back in the 1800s, it was like, Scottsville and Columbia were all these huge, quote-unquote, metropolises for the time, because
They were on the river.
they were on the river, and
Yeah.
that's where. And it also was the downside. They were on the river because every time it flooded, the town got wiped out.
Right.
And they rebuilt it. And what happened over time, the town just. If you would show pictures of literally buildings were falling down, it just, people moved away. The world of the 50s happened, right? And the 60s happened.
Well, then you had the rail. You had trains.
That's exactly right.
Deprioritizing river transportation.
When I was talking about vehicle, when I was talking about the 50s and the 60s, that's when the vehicle, the car craze kind of kicked in on that end of it. But, the rumor is it was one vote away from being the state capital because it was so important, because what happened is the lock system, which many people don't know, would run up the Rivanna River, right? So this is in the 17 and 1800s, which Jefferson, I think, was part of the designing and the building of that stuff. They would take goods, tobacco products, all this kind of great stuff through the lock system. And if you take your family out and hike along the Heritage Trail, you'll actually see remnants of the lock system, and they would, take oxen, I guess, or whatever they would take, or horses and mules, run.
Oxen.
Oxen. I don't know. It popped in my head. Isn't that right, though? Isn't it?
I don't know. You're the expert, my friend.
I'm an expert.
You're the expert.
But it's, it's going to be. I would love to hear from people from Crozet, the ones that are in support of the town, why they really. We know why from a big picture, right, on the end of it. But make an argument why you want to turn it into a town.
Jackson says, yes, Jerry, I am watching in Crozet, and to Keith's point, me included, I'd like to see us have more of a control of our future. Right now, we're at the mercy of Board of Supervisors that represent Albemarle in totality and not Crozet specifically.
So that's the problem with Charlottesville, right? So Charlottesville does not have a district system, right, or a not a district system, a ward system in the city, right? So it's all out at larges. So what the gentleman is referring to is, I think Ann Malik represents Whitehall, which is what Crozet is in, and then there's, they have different board of supervisors that represent different districts, and of course all that's about ready to get redefined here with redistricting, and we don't really know where those lines are going to settle through this redistricting process, which is a great show to talk about. This was a huge thing that changed in November. Most folks don't know about this, that it's kind of went from the point where some board of supervisors or elected officials would kind of indiscriminately. Now, they had to go through certain processes, but I can tell you firsthand, I've seen it where districts were drawn around to keep a certain individual out of running for elected office.
You want to?
Nope. just the whole finger thing pointing at me was good enough. But it got carved out, so I couldn't run for office at that particular point in time. So all that cannot happen anymore. There's a whole process going through it, which is great.
We have more comments coming in. This is from Nicholas Erpy. We love you, Nicholas Erpy, on today's program. I hate it when community leaders are excited about the prospect of collecting and raising taxes, especially when they don't consider the cost of taxation on the taxed. Hoping Crozet remains townless for a while. Nicholas Erpy.
Yeah, so we have two different opinions. Love both of them. I would love to understand from the town. So from not having it town, it's clear, it's in front of us, it's been operating this way for quite some time, right? But if it wants to turn into a town, maybe we bring in some folks, and I have to work on the list of to talk about, what the benefits of that is and what's the cost to that end of it. But I suspect you would have to pay 3 series of taxes of some sort. Albemarle for sure, because the schools will stay in Albemarle, right? I don't think the town of Scottsville is going to set up its own school district. It'll have to take care of the roads, because VDOT won't do it any longer once it becomes a town. And that's usually the largest expense, to a township. I remember going through that with Scottsville and Columbia and some of the other towns. They need to do that. They have to probably set up or do some sort of relationship with the utility companies, the service companies, the water and sewer, because they're not going to create their own service authority on that type of. So there's going to have to be a partnership. There's a ton of entanglements that have to be entangled in order to do that. But if they do that, then they control what goes on there.
This comment comes in for Jonathan. Forrest Marshall served on the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. He was redistricted out of Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. He was a Republican, but he was one of the best supervisors to serve Albemarle. He was the chair in 1998. Strong comment right there. Bill McKenzie jumps in with a comment about your thoughts on Belmont. And the commercialization of beautiful Belmont. He says it probably isn't going to work, but it basically says with the addition of restaurants and live music, it got so loud in Belmont that it disturbed the peace of the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's the flip side to that, right? That's the beautiful thing about turning the pavilion from a little. Do you remember when it was a grass field?
I do. Yeah, I do remember. I do not remember when the pavilion was on the other side of the mall, but I do remember when it was a grass field. At one time, the pavilion was on the ice park side of the mall.
That's exactly what. I can't remember that in '87. I always seem to remember it.
No, it was down on that side.
Was it really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe I had too many beer tickets at the time.
And they moved it down to the other side to kind of drive growth and interest onto that side of the mall, which is the quieter side. And then Korn and Red Light got involved. And now the positive is we have some of the best musicians in the world come play Charlottesville.
I can't pronounce it. I'm going to forget about it. I'm going to screw up her last name, so I will leave it alone. But so the flip side to that is you've got this noise, right? Now, I believe there's a noise ordinance in Charlottesville.
There is.
I'm pretty sure it's 11 p.m., but I may be wrong.
Okay. I think it might be a little earlier.
It might be 10 p.m.?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's what happens. But I understand Bill's thing. When you get to be of a certain age, and we're still talking about this certain age, 10 o'clock's late, for us guys that are knocking on 60 or thereabouts. So I get it. But that's so everything has this yin and yang, right? Everything has this positive and negative on the end of it. Again, I remember in '87, a lot of the homes. I'll give you a prime example. My sister bought a home, literally just like the Tremont. It's a 4 square. She bought it in, oh my God, I think it was right out of high school. God love her. Helped her buy her first house. It was like under $100,000, needed a ton of work. We all chipped in and helped her turn the house around, and she did well when she sold it and moved her family away. They're still in town, but they needed a much bigger house for all their kids.
This comes in from Mustache Dan Pettit. Dan, we love when you watch the program. He's responding to Jackson Krailing's comment, Jackson of Crozet. Dan Pettit says this: That was not Jackson's question. He is saying Charlottesville and Albemarle County housing has increased, and it is driving all affordable housing out of Charlottesville and Albemarle County.
That it is.
Charlottesville and Albemarle County are headed towards only areas for people mostly of wealth.
So,
Hard to disagree with that.
No, it's not to disagree. All you got to do is look at the market.
The numbers.
The market is telling you this is what's happening. The market is driving out, and the homes that are outside this perimeter, this internal perimeter, right? This bullseye and this second ring, for those who play darts on that end of it, is also just moving out. Look, I know you don't like it when I say this, so I won't say it. But
You can say whatever you want.
yeah, increasing density is only going to help. If you give options for people to buy in the inner city, it'll help offset the raising prices. It's always, Neil will tell us
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand. It's 101 stuff. And the point I was trying to make earlier, this is what happened in the early 1900s, was the same thing. Now, I'm going to argue with myself a little bit. They also walked to work. You take the town of Cape Charles as an example. Everybody walked to work. There was no, the car wasn't around, right? Well, it kind of was, but it wasn't around back there. It wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So people would live in these duplexes, and then they would walk to work. You would walk to Main Street. You would get all the food that you want. But isn't that kind of what's happening now? Isn't that all happening all over again?
Isn't that kind of happening in pretty much every city in the world?
Every city in the United States.
Take New York City.
Yeah, sure.
Take San Francisco.
Yeah, but New York was built that way. New York was built that way back in 1800s.
The difference with New York City is they have the ubiquitous and approachable transportation to offset the cash outlay of getting in a car and driving 45 minutes to work.
Sure.
You can get on a subway and get there in 15 as opposed to navigating traffic in 45.
So everybody knew that's where I grew up. And you if you were by a train stop or by a bus stop and didn't have to walk a couple of blocks is not a lot. But in the middle of the winter as a kid, a couple of blocks is a lot to walk to the train station. But the closer you were to the train station, the more money you paid. It's just the way it was. And, my daughter who was here from Seattle got on a plane this morning, that they may be staying out in Seattle. And it's just, that's what happens as this light rail starts pushing out, property's just going through the roof. And then they're looking just outside of that. So their rationale is, well, if I can take my rad bike 2 miles to the train station and lock up my rad bike to get on the train station to go to work at the hospital where my son-in-law works, that was literally a conversation we had over the weekend. Okay, well, let's go. And it just starts going further and further, and that's Dan's point out that way. But, look, we're a couple guys on a talk show, spitballing, having a cup of coffee. If these things were easy, we wouldn't be talking about them.
So I'm going to paint a picture for you, and then you take it from there. Okay? You got historically low, generationally low interest rates.
Yep.
You got way less housing inventory than we need.
Mm-hmm.
You got new construction that is way behind where new construction should be.
Mm-hmm.
You got a zoning code and zoning ordinances that make new construction extremely difficult to do. 24% of the cost of new construction is associated with government bureaucracy. You got a transportation system that is meager at best. You have density of people that is not dense enough to make the transportation infrastructure what we need. You got the University of Virginia admitting more students than ever before, hiring more people than ever before. You got graduates from UVA that spent their 4 best years of their life waxing nostalgic, saying, I want to move back to Charlottesville. My time at the university was amazing, and now I can earn a big city salary and work from an ISP in my basement where the cost of living in Charlottesville is lower than D.C., Northern Virginia, and New York.
After they just cashed out.
After they just cashed out of a $1.2 million townhome, and are scooping up real estate here, saying this is affordable, driving up price points. My friend, this is a snowball. This is an avalanche that is steamrolling down Carter's Mountain, and is, from my standpoint, absolutely unstoppable.
Well, back to the market question. The market is what's dictating that. But this whole process of these livable communities and this whole process of zoning is supposed, and the comprehensive plan is to talk about what we want this, whoever the we is, right? Flavanna's going through its own, Albemarle County's going through its own. What do we want this to look like? But what controls this is the zoning ordinance. Is Nick still watching?
Nicholas Erpe is still watching. So is Sean Michael Tevendale.
Ask Nick to do me a favor, and he's a sharp guy, and he can do that. 1920 versus today. How much does $1920 at $1,200 equals today? Does that make sense?
Rephrase that again. Nicholas Erpe, we got a little math formula for you here.
So I'm looking at, you could buy a duplex in 1920, one of these kit houses that come on the train, for $1,197. If you read through it, it's the kitchen, it's everything in parts in that thing.
So in 1920, you could buy a duplex for $1,200.
The material.
The material for $1,200.
Then you'd have to put it together.
How much is $1,200 today, Nicholas Erpe?
That's the question I'm trying to ask. Thank you very much.
How much is $1,200 today? In 1920, 100 years ago, you could buy the material for one of these kit houses for $1,200.
That's exactly right. And
how much is it worth? That was
a duplex,
today?
By the way. That was for two units, an up and a lower and an upper unit, which are built in Belmont. Same exact kind of houses. So look, to go back to, I lost track. What was the question again?
It's an avalanche that can't be stopped. The invisible hand of capitalism. The Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust is doing amazing things.
We are.
Habitat for Humanity is doing amazing things.
That is true.
PHA is doing amazing things.
That is true also.
Nicole Scrow is doing amazing things.
That is true also.
Gwen Cassidy, amazing things.
Absolutely.
Here's the reality. For every amazing thing each of these stakeholders is doing, the invisible hand of capitalism is doing it times 10.
Yes, and I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to respond to that because
you can go anywhere you want.
Because
you're the casting director.
I'm the casting director.
And the executive producer.
And the executive
and the star of the show.
I don't know about that. Liza's the star of the show. Versus what? What's the alternative? Right? What's the alternative?
I mean, the alternative, Nicholas Erpe says...
So you're trying to say drop capitalism, is that what you're saying? Or you're trying to do this as for the sake of a talk show?
For the sake of a talk show. I just don't see... Look.
So I get chills when I think about that.
Nicholas Erpe says $1,200 in 1920 is $16,380 today.
So for $16,000...
So you're talking 16x, 15x.
That's interesting. For $16,000, you would got a train load full of material for a duplex unit.
14x. 1,200 times 14. Call it 14x.
Yeah. Inflation,
100 years.
Yeah. So again, if this was a simple answer, going back to your question, we would have, we wouldn't be talking about it, right? We'd be talking about, rainbows and puppies or something on the show. So it's a hard question to answer, right? And how do you do that? Because I'm a free market guy. I'm a capitalist, right?
Me too. Someone from the Crozet Community Advisory Committee is watching, our friend Mark McKinney. Hello, Mark McKinney. Mark McKinney, should Crozet be a town?
And if so, what does that look like?
And what does that, okay, there you go, Mark McKinney.
What does that look like? What is that? We know pretty much what the process is, but what does that look like on the back end of it? What autonomy do you hope to get from that? And how much is that going to cost to get there? And then what impacts it might have on the rest of the jurisdiction too.
Bill McChenzie, at my age, I love hearing the sounds from the Charlottesville High School athletic fields and band competitions, but if it were a weekend rock and roll concert, I would not appreciate it. Oh, by the way, at childbearing age, you would not want your baby kept awake either.
Oh yeah, we just experienced that.
I know all about that.
Yeah. We just we went through this with an 8-month and a 2.5-year-old, and I accidentally slammed the front door. And
that'll get Mama upset, won't it?
Oh no, forget about Mama. Grandma was all over me. So I mean, look, this is this is a tough subject, a tough topic to talk about, and no matter what we do, and one of our rules here is no politics, and we don't point fingers at anything. And I just bring a little bit of my personal experience to the table on these conversations. You know, I've been at this game for 10 years trying to help this affordable housing, help move this missing middle. I've personally engaged in it quite a bit. Look, the reality of it is I think it works. I think it will work. You know, there's been some information out there that, you know, maybe was slighted one way or the other way. Both sides do it, right? Because they're trying to win a fight, they're trying to win an argument, and they're trying to do that. But, you know, zoning is one of the core functions, at least at the moment. Zoning is one of the core functions of local government. If you look up local government on the dictionary, because I'm kind of old school and I'll open up a dictionary, you know, it's called policing powers. The local jurisdictions get policing powers, just like the state does, just like the feds do. And one of the things in policing powers, it's not just police, right? It's not that. It is zoning. And that's how you enforce land use regulations on that end of it. And this is why it's so important for Bill, and I apologize, I didn't write down all the names.
Jackson, Nicholas, Mark McKinney's got his thoughts. And remember, he's Crozet Community Advisory Committee.
Sure, I'd love to
he's
hear
a member.
I really love to hear it.
On September 5th of this year, so 2 days ago, wrote an opinion piece for the Crozet Gazette.
I think I read that. Did it make it to the Daily Progress?
I don't think it made it to the Daily Progress. And he says, because they're not sister publications.
I read something in the Daily Progress.
And he says, to be or not to become an incorporated town.
Cool.
Mark, I will read a portion of this. He's a smart guy. Mark McKinney. The mere idea of becoming an incorporated town is simply what I call a feel-good idea. When you study the process and understand what it will mean for businesses and residents alike, you will find that it provides no real solution to some of the problems at hand, such as crowded schools, looming traffic congestion, and a lack of affordable housing. We should be equally upset with the fact that an Albemarle planning commissioner suggested that Crozet ought to become an incorporated town. This gives the perception that they have no desire to help solve the problem and would rather outsource the solution to others. Those comments should be an insult to all Crozetians.
So thank you for clarifying that. I assume this came from the community. You saying it came from the planning commission?
Well, it came from both.
Got it.
It's come from both.
Got it.
He continues, if we decide to incorporate, it will be a long, costly, and cumbersome legal process, one that we will regret before we even incorporate. I sense that the process to accomplish this will take years, and in the end, there will be no immediate relief to the frustrations listed above. Additionally, problems will be created along the way, stakeholder relationships will deteriorate, and Crozet will isolate itself from the county. However, the concept begs two important questions. First, what would a town budget look like? Second, how do we levy significant additional taxes on residents and businesses without driving them away? I anticipate a town budget in the range of 15 to 18 million a year. This assumption is based on the county's projected population for Crozet of 13 to 17,000 residents. 2 paragraphs left and the show is yours, Keith. It is also morally wrong to levy such an unnecessary and excessive tax burden on businesses and residents because of frustration due to past, present, and future land development. If we incorporated as a town, we would box ourselves in with no other choices but to tax our way out. Could there be an added property tax on top of the county's property tax? What about a local municipality tax on earned income? Increased tax on sales, meals, and business licenses. Where does it stop? And lastly, Keith Smith, when all is said and done, all we will have accomplished is overtaxing business to the point that they decide to leave. Next, we overtax residents to make up for the loss in revenue from businesses. Now residents leave and no one will move to Crozet. We will have done this to ourselves and wasted millions of dollars along the way. The incorporated town of Crozet then fails. The General Assembly revokes the town charter. We end up right back to where we are today, where we should remain, part of Albemarle County.
It'll be worse.
Mark McKinney, well done.
Well done, Mark. Look, the only comment I would make to that, everything is spot on that end of it. But so if somebody really wishes to turn Crozet into and this is a world I know very well, turn a Crozet into a town, it's no different than creating a development. It's literally the same process. except you got to go to the state, right, to go through a rezoning process on that end of it. And I think if I heard you right, somewhere around 3 years he was guessing it would take time to do that.
Yeah.
My suspicion
Years.
it'll be 6 to 8 years minimum, probably close to 10 years. And what's going to happen in 10 years? So what they're going to do is how this process works, they're going to create a meets and bounds. Okay, this is the area, this is the circle, this is the polygram, right? Is that the right term, polygram? Multiple side I don't know.
Judah, you went out.
Geometry.
Judah's
Polygram,
jumping
right? Huh?
When Judah says, oh man, it means we need to go to a different word.
Got it. A multi-sided geometric figure. I believe it's a polygram.
Is that right?
Polygon, thank you. Gram is something else. That was back in the 1800s when we used to send telegrams. I'm sorry, I get that. Well, we used to send telexes in the 80s anyway. Sorry, guys. I was mixing up graham.
No problem.
I was mixing graham crackers and poly all together. Still had
Polygon. Nicholas Erpy, Polygon.
Polygon. Thank you, Nicholas, for keeping us straight, or me straight anyway. So what'll happen is this polygon, multi-sided geometric figure, right? It's not a circle. Is going to be drawn. It's going to take time to get it drawn, and then what's going to happen is all the development all this process isn't going to stop unless, God forbid, there's another unpleasantness of the real estate economy, which then it stops. We
don't foresee that happening.
That there's no indication of that.
No indication that's going to happen
anytime soon.
Right.
It's slow down maybe, but we'll never. I don't think we'll ever see the implosion. All the pieces of the puzzle.
Too many protocols in place to keep that from happening.
And a lot of really smart people are predicting that. So do that. So the problem, what's going to happen, somebody's going to spend all this time, all this money, all this energy, go through a development process to create a town, and all of a sudden you're going to have Charlottesville, where we have 10 square miles.
10.2.
10.2, excuse me.
Don't forget that point, too.
Polygon. So, Nicholas, thanks for keeping me straight.
You're on point right now.
Am I on point? The coffee's kicking in.
Cheers.
Cheers. The coffee's kicking in. Either that or the allergy medicine's kicking in.
Yona says he's full of meds. Be kind to him, please, everyone. Yona, we love your husband. You know we love your husband dearly here on the I Love Seville Network. He's one of our inner circle friends.
Well, she's right. I'm full of meds at the moment. So between the antihistamine and the coffee
and the halls
and the halls, which I haven't.
Or is that Ricola?
Ricola, actually.
Remember the commercial?
Ricola. Don't do that to me. I can't get up that high. So all of a sudden, in the article, just listening to the 2 paragraphs is spot on. Somebody's going to go through all this trouble because they're not just going to say, okay, a judge isn't going to walk in and say, okay, we're going to put a less pendants on this, or we're going to do whatever we're going to do, and everything stops until this is resolved. That's not going to happen. I don't think so anyway. That's not going to happen. And then the process is just going to go through. And then the next thing you know, you're going to be this 10.2, and then it's going to be, okay, we got to reset the lines again. And I would love somebody to dig into this, and I just, maybe at some point we'll do this. How many towns went the other way? I know of Columbia, but there are some cases where towns are like, look, I don't want to be a town no more. This is too expensive. I'm out, and hand it back over. I know that, again, that's what happened in Columbia. It got absorbed by Fluvanna County. And it was because of this. They couldn't take care of the roads. They couldn't do anything, right? Because they had no tax revenue to do it. And nobody to tax because everybody vacated the town. Now, there was multiple reasons for that over the course of time, mostly because every time it rained, your roof was underwater from the James. But actually, little
Yona's doing Ricola for you right now. Yona, I love you. That just made me laugh out loud. I'm giving her the ha 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 back. She did it for you. She loves you.
No, of course she does. Of course. I mean, look at this. Why would you not?
Look at this, Yona. The man's getting a little brash on us here.
It's the meds. It's the meds.
Let me reel him back in, Yona. She says, yes, please.
It's the meds. It's the meds. I now feel totally embarrassed.
No, stop. You don't get embarrassed.
I do, actually.
This is from your buddy, Quentin Beckham. Are you ready for this?
I am ready for Mr. Beckham.
Complex topic. But remember that free market is a bit of a misnomer. We have rules. These rules promote capitalism by allowing a level of inequality that rewards innovation. The issue we are wanting to work on in the macro sense is the access to personal success and income increase. When we talk about housing affordability, only half the equation is the price of the home. The other half is real estate income and wealth generation. Access to wealth generation is very strongly tied to home ownership. It is my personal belief that increasing access to home ownership across the income spectrum is one of the single best things we can do effectively to spread the opportunity of the American dream to all our communities. Help moderate the excessive income inequality, and we are experiencing, and also help with a variety of social issues specific to the disenfranchised. Make no mistake, continued economic growth is contingent on there being a strong middle class. The missing middle is as much about wage earnings as it is about housing prices. Is this simple? No. There are no silver bullets, there are
silver buckshots.
Silver buckshots.
I actually spoke to Robert this weekend.
But each step makes the next step more attainable, and none of these efforts adversely affect capitalism.
And this, and
the town of Mineral seeks to revoke its charter.
Correct. Well, I think
possibly dissolved to Louisiana County.
I think they walked that back if you read a little further into it. But they were trying to do that. But it's the same scenario. But Quentin's 100% right. He just wrote it in a way that I actually couldn't articulate it in words, verbally. That it's he's 100% right. There's zonings in place, right? Well, unfortunately, they put this what's called exclusionary zoning, which the word actually it means is they excluded these duplexes, and that all happened after the 20s. It was in the mid-30s when that was coming in there. They excluded that, and it turned into what we have now. It pushed the lower wage earner out, and Quentin is 100% right. Missing middle is about a structure. But it's not about structure, really. It's about the workforce housing, the affordable housing. And these cities that have been successful in it, they've kind of dovetailed it in it because they have the policing power to do this. As they would say, okay, look, this fancy duplex that was a kit for $1,200 in 1920, if Jerry and Keith buy a piece of property in Belmont and build it on it or turn one into it or whatever we do on that, and we do it at affordable housing, guess what we get? We get tax credits, right? We have an incentive to go ahead and do that. Because here's the other problem that some of the people aren't talking about this kind of thing, and it's going to come up in this conversation. You and I can get together and turn that into 2 Airbnbs. And that doesn't help affordable housing. That doesn't help anybody. If that's what you're looking to do. It's also a great business model too, right? It's a great business model to go ahead and do that. So you do these incentives, and that's what local governments and state governments, they have these tools to help do that. Part of the problem is that they don't know how to communicate with one another.
You know who would benefit incredibly if Crozet was converted to a town? Nelson County.
Fluvanna County,
Nelson County, Waynesboro.
Waynesboro.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Bill, the attempt at Charlottesville Township many years ago was squashed because of an increase in taxes. Bill continues, in the town of Dayton, Virginia, where my sister lives, there is Rockingham County and Dayton town taxes on real estate and personal property taxes on automobiles, boats, etc.
Correct, yeah. And again, if you're in Crozet and you live in a little thing called Old Trail, you're going to get hit with both sides of it.
Nicholas, definitely agree on home ownership creating wealth. Financial education is essential so that more people, especially in lower earning families, make investment decisions that will push them up the economic ladder. And that's why you need to call Emergent Financial Services. I added that part, Emergent Financial Services.
Or Realty Partners.
Or Realty Partners.
Well, we so those who watch the show know I chair the now it's called the Piedmont Community Land Trust, which took me 3 years to get to the new name change, which I'm excited about. We teach this class about home ownership, and actually on a whiteboard, because I love whiteboards, we go through this appreciation and equity model, and folks that have been renting don't quite understand, and this is not the format to do that because you really need a whiteboard to map it out. But and Quentin can chime in because there's a bunch of data out there that does that. But the average net worth of a renter is somewhere in $4,000 to $8,000, if I remember it correctly, nationwide. Somebody who owns a piece of property, the net worth is multiple, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, though. A quick Google search will find that for you. But that's what home ownership does. You build your generational wealth, and it's amazing. We're doing this great little project over with Stanley Martin at Spring Hill, right? Where we took $120,000 and turned it into about $3 million in property and moving in. Actually, today we're closing our sixth one tomorrow, moving, between a 60 to 80% area median income home into it. And every one of these folks that we help move into that house, they don't ask me what my appreciation is or what my equity is and how much money I'm going to make in year 10. All they look you in the face with tears, every single one of them, at the closing table with tears. I can't wait to either give this to one of my family members or help somebody else. Nobody, and I've done 14 of them so far in the last couple of years. Not a single one of them said, I want to know how much is in it for me. Not a single family. Every family is, hey, we want to pay it forward, or can I, the number one question in the class is, can I leave it to my children? And the answer is yes. They don't care how much money they're going to make. They just want to pay it forward. And that's huge. I get chills thinking about that.
I serve on a couple of boards, one of them residential. Leave it at that.
Got it.
One of the members texted this to me. Jerry, I'm listening to the show while driving in the car. Please pass this along to Keith. Ready for this?
I am. Uh-oh. I got notes.
Until the government gets out of its own way, housing prices will go up, up, and up. Yeah. The government is making this difficult to create housing. We all see it firsthand. And as a result, we've made our own bed, and it's a predicament we made ourselves.
I tell this story all the time. First development I did was the acres at Lake Monticello in 1992. By the time I put it on the contract, rezoned it, went through the site plan, and put a bulldozer on the job site, took me 6 months. It will take you 6 years now to go through that process, and it may not even happen. So two things are happening. One is, how do you predict the market? With something 6 years. That's 6 years to go through zoning and site plan. Then you got to build a subdivision. Then you got to build the houses. And then you have to move people in. So that's closer to 8 years or so from today. How do one predict?
Ooh, I'm getting ripped on the HOA comment.
Oh, you really?
Yeah. This is multiple people saying HOAs are what's wrong with this community, Jerry. I don't necessarily agree with that. I understand why people have beef with HOAs, but I don't think that's what's wrong with this community. And the reason I serve on these boards, including the board of the Macklin in my neighborhood, is I want to make a difference.
Sure.
I want to see the table.
They're little governments.
Yeah.
They're little. Do
you have a comment on the HOA comment?
Well, kind of give it a little bit more context. That I don't understand. They think HOAs are bad, or they think HOAs are causing this problem. Is that what they're thinking?
Yeah. Like a good example is.
So let's talk about that.
HOA galvanizes together, organizes against development, for example.
Sure.
You've seen that.
Yeah, sure, of course, yeah. There's a particular project running through Fluvanna County that has 4,500 residents probably up in arms about it, and that's fine on that end of it. But let's talk about HOAs. So let's talk about your HOA, because I know about your HOA before it was created. I literally built the first house, permitted and CO'd the first house in there when they did that. So go back to elections matter, go back to regulation. You can't build a subdivision now. You can't rezone a subdivision in any of our local jurisdictions that is not a minor subdivision. So let's say Albemarle County, I believe it's 5 lots, and if Neil's watching, he'll correct me if I'm wrong on that end of it. Anything requiring that, I can speak to Fluvanna County because it's in my backyard. If you do a subdivision other than minor subdivision, it must be an HOA. The zoning ordinance says it has to be an HOA because they, meaning the county or the city, does not want to take on the liability of maintaining roads or maintaining so forth and so on. Now, there's little tricks of the trade. You can build VDOT roads in it and move the roads out of it. But as a rule of thumb, if you open up any zoning ordinance right now, it says you must do that. So if the folks are not happy with HOAs, then they need to change that. Right? You need to say, okay, it's not required to have an HOA in it. You can do that. Now, what has happened in most jurisdictions back in the day, they've gotten rid of, Fluvanna County. Again, I could talk about it, I know it chapter and verse. If you do anything more than a minor subdivision, it must be what they call a cluster development. And you need to have central water, central sewer. You need to have all these requirements. So what they have done, this quote-unquote exclusionary zoning, or through the zoning, they have outlawed.
Can you just have covenant and restrictions?
Yeah, of course.
Daniel Pettit.
Of course, yeah. But once you start getting your density up, right? So if you cut 5 lots into it, you do CNRs, covenants and restrictions. So those who don't know the difference between the covenants and restrictions and HOA, and this is a whole show unto itself. Covenants and restrictions attached to the land, they usually last about 40 years on that end of it, and it's things like, you can't have chickens, blah, 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 blah. 9 times out of 10, they just echo the county ordinance at that time for A1 or whatever it is. They're generally around larger lot subdivision, 2 acres, 10 acres. So what the point I was trying to make, and particularly in all the jurisdictions, but I can speak intimately about Fluvanna County, if you do anything more than that, you have to have all this other infrastructure put into, so it makes it super expensive for the developer to do that. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you and I found a bunch of land and wanted to go through the whole trouble and rebuild the subdivision you live in, the ordinances require it to be a homeowners association.
Jackson says, Jerry, you're missing the point. HOAs are not bad inherently. It's when they come together to keep other people from owning homes that the community sees them as bad.
Yeah, well, this is United States of America, right? Pretty sure it is. So,
this is the United States of America.
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
Polygon.
It was Polygon, and I lived in parts of the world that you
I love when you do this.
Could not do that.
Yeah.
I lived behind the Iron Curtain for a half a decade.
So you're basically saying, even if you disagree with it, at least we have the opportunity to disagree and agree.
So interesting thing. Is any of my daughters watching?
Yasmina or Yvonne?
Either one. Well, Yvonne's in a plane, so it's not Yvonne.
Yasmina, are you watching? Harry Tyson, are you watching?
So I'm gonna. It's interesting. We had a family dinner on Saturday evening with the whole family, and one corner to the other corner, my 27-year-old daughter and my 80-year-old plus 82-year-old father had a debate about something. I'll just leave the subject out.
Okay.
And we had a debate around it, and they were on 2 different sides. My daughter's a little on the liberal side, my father's a little bit on the conservative side. And we had a debate. I think it was 3 bottles of wine worth of debate on that end of it. Well, that's how we usually gauge our debates on that stuff. So we don't argue, we have a debate. Both sides were trying to make their position on the end of it, and then at the very end of it, everybody hugged and said, we love you very much. I don't agree with you. I'm going to agree to disagree with you, but I love you, and and that's okay. So the point I'm trying to make is, if it was an HOA or not an HOA, a covenants and restriction, it doesn't matter. The neighborhood that you're talking about would be up in arms.
Kimberly says it's the HOAs that are keeping the density from coming to Charlottesville. Just look what the Lewis Mountain neighborhood is doing. Just look what the neighborhoods in this community are doing to keep people from having a slice of the American dream. It's despicable, she says.
Yeah, and the things about HOAs are, most folks don't know this, they actually have more authority than local governments.
Well, I mean, and that's why we've said that if...
you're talking emotional neighborhoods going there. I'm talking about authority, right? If you miss your dues, or they can say...
They can put a lien on your house.
They can put a lien on your house faster than a bank can put a lien on your house.
I mean, it's something you don't want to mess with.
HOAs are... but why do people like to live in HOAs?
Well, I mean, you have roads taken care of.
Sure.
Common areas taken care of.
In my HOA, I got cops and firemen.
Cops, same. I mean, you have security.
Well, we have actual police officers.
You got gates for protection. I mean, you got swimming.
I'm not a fan of the gates, but that's a whole
swimming pools.
Yeah, sure.
Amenities.
I went for a bike ride Saturday morning, a 2-hour bike ride Saturday morning around Lake Monticello, and I came back and I said to my wife, I said, what the hell's wrong with us? We haven't gone to the main beach once this year. I live in a place that has 5 sandy beaches, and I said, what's wrong with us? You know, we don't take advantage of it because to us it's work. We get up and work, and this is where we work and all this stuff. Look, I think the people that are fighting against this stuff, let's call it what it is, NIMBYs, right? Doesn't matter if there was an HOA. It doesn't matter if there's covenant restriction. It doesn't matter if it was written on the back of a napkin. The NIMBYs would be against it. Period. End of story. Right? Now, the problem with HOAs is, again, I think from one that lives in them, one that buys and sells quite a bit in that, we always make sure our client
understands the covenants and restrictions and the documents.
We sit down with them and we make sure they read it. In Lake Monticello's thing, it's about this big. So 300, 400 pages. You need to understand what you can do. And oh, by the way, they can do a special assessment pretty much for any reason. We went through this at the lake, which was great. We supported it because it was, I can't remember how many millions and millions of dollars to rebuild the pools, to rebuild the clubhouses, to rebuild the golf course, because they were amenities. They were helping the value of the properties to go in it, you know, but they were kind of going downhill. Not much work was done with them since the 60s, late 60s, early 70s when they were built. But yeah, I mean, we can do an HOA. I mean, I love these Tuesday shows because we end up with these great topics, and then I got to scramble to find people to fill in.
Dan Pettit, don't go to Beach 2, Keith. That's my beach.
It says a sign there. It says Smith is not allowed. But I sneak in on my bike. He doesn't know it.
Oh, Dan Pettit.
Actually, Beach 3 is my favorite beach. Dan
Pettit cracks me up.
Beach 5, I'm not a fan of.
Paul MacArthur, good to see you yesterday
Hey,
at the
Paul.
Nook, Paul. People don't like HOAs until their neighbor paints their house purple.
That's exactly right. Because covenants and restrictions won't control that. The county won't control that, right? Or there was a gentleman, I think it was Bill, talking about the noise ordinances. So an HOA can set its own ordinances as long as it's more restrictive than the local jurisdiction. So, for instance, building setbacks is a big one, right? So building setbacks, most HOAs, building setbacks are greater than like a county or a city.
Keith Smith, Batman and Robin and the Tuesday show.
Oh, look at that.
Super fun.
I literally had no topics today. I had the one topic I wanted to give Nicole Scrow and Liverpool.
70 minutes in.
70 minutes in. So
how's the market? To recap, let's talk market dynamics.
Yeah, so big picture. I've had my hands full from Friday until this morning with grandbabies and all this kind of great stuff. But I took a look at the market this morning. We're starting this, to the last 7 days, a little bit of balance. It seems that way. It feels like it's turning around. It feels like there's a little bit more inventory coming in, but it seems to be going off just as fast of it. I didn't crunch the numbers in specific, how many days on market and all that fun stuff. But I look at the market monitor and we're getting a little bit of balance. Now, that was just the last week. We'll see how it goes. I know for our business, we need listings, folks. Thank you to your team and everybody here. Everything we have on listings is under contract. So.
All those listings went under contract? All the listings from last week are now under contract?
Yeah.
Plackers?
Yeah.
Plackers is. Eagles?
Yeah, you're asking me questions that I have to double check, and I know I'm supposed to know it. I've been tied up for the last couple of days. But
Smiths?
I was referring to the Smiths.
Okay.
Everything that the Smiths has got, the Smiths have is.
I know Plackers is.
Yeah,
Michael Plackers.
I've been tracking that. Yeah. But yeah, so it's moving just as fast. I think you're going to start to see more inventory crank up. But look, guys, supply 101. But the reality of it is, all the stuff we're talking about, this missing middle.
This from Twitter. Keith, do you see more inventory coming on the market this fall?
I literally was just going to answer that question. I think you're going to see an incremental, look at that big word, an incremental increase. But I think you're going to see them come off at the same rate. I don't think you're going to see this pickup excuse me, this pickup in inventory that is going to outpace what's going on pending. I think it's going to play this ping pong game or this pickleball game, right? Back and forth.
Well,
back and forth. Look at that.
Yeah, good job.
Back and forth on that end of it. You play ping pong? You
I
probably
play all the rackets, all the paddle and racket
I'd
sports.
imagine.
Anything hand-eye coordination.
You should play with Yona. She's really good at ping pong.
I'm
she
good.
She wants. I know, but you're too much of a gentleman to. No, you'll probably.
I would try to bring it,
I know,
and she would appreciate that.
Yeah, she would appreciate
Yeah.
that. But actually, we were talking about this weekend. She wants to put a ping pong table at the office.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, except for the one who can't play ping pong. Yeah,
That's
which
so
would
fun.
Be me.
Ashley Palmer, welcome to the program. Sean Michael Tevendale, biker extraordinaire.
Yeah.
Watching the program.
So look, every conversation we're having with our buyer clients is don't give up, stay in the game. It's still the best time to buy. You're still at, sub 3 in some cases, right around 3. That 3% mortgage rate. It's just insanely low. You know, you got to stay in the game. And the only way you're going to build this equity and appreciation is to be in the game. Otherwise, you're going to be the renter, which is nothing's wrong with that, right? That's a good thing. But you just, you historically don't build up your appreciation and your equity that you can pass on to your family.
Leslie, not only is there no inventory on the market to buy, there are few rental options for our family to consider. And the ones that are on the market are either not in great condition or priced higher than mortgages themselves.
So that's, I'm not an expert in the rental market. We've tried to bring in a couple of folks, and we're going to continue to do that. This is going to be a bit of an implosion when all this evictions start coming in, because it's coming. And I hate to even say it, but I think you're going to see an increase in that, which may help the sale inventory. It's sure as hell not going to help the rental folks.
No one wants to see anyone.
Nobody wants, just
evicted.
like nobody wants to see somebody not have a job.
Right.
But it's funny, not funny, but I got to go back to CVS to pick up my meds. Mrs. Smith, I did not have a chance to get my meds because I was waiting there for a half an hour before the show to get my meds. They only had one pharmacist there. I was talking to the pharmacist that said I need 2 to 3 more. Right, there was only one young lady at the register. I said, "Look, I just can't do this fast. Now, this is simple antibiotics. I mean, this is not a pull it off the shelf kind of thing." And I said, "Great, you know what? I'll come back in an hour." He said, "Look, I'll get you taken care of. We'll come back in an hour." But couldn't walk out with a simple prescription.
And how long did you wait?
I was there for half an hour, and then I realized it was about 5 after 10.
You said, "Yeah, better hustle over here."
I said, "Mr. Miller will be the director will be very mad at me if I'm not here." So who do you got today?
Alex Erpy.
Oh yeah, I love Tuesdays.
I love talking with the Erpies. We learned quite a bit
Good
on the program. He is Keith Smith of Yes Realty Partners. Keith Smith of Yes Realty Partners. They will help you navigate this difficult process of buying and selling a home. Yes Realty Partners. We also thank Interstate Pest and Service Companies, a home's best friend. Interstate has helped realtors, customers, families, and friends alike get their home in the best shape possible for the buying and selling process. Today's show was fantastic. We hope you enjoyed it. We try to bring difficult topics to you in approachable fashion, and we air the show on every social media platform known to mankind.
And Friday, a little shout out for Friday. We've got Neil Williamson and Sean Tubbs. We're probably going to tackle a little bit of this.
I hope Sean does not do karaoke on Thursday.
Oh, yeah. Well,
because it might strain the vocal cords.
There's really no controlling Sean Tubbs.
There's no controlling Sean Tubbs.
We'll give him a couple extra of these little throat
Ricola.
lozenges. Ricola. And, oh, God, I didn't even try that. Thank you very much.
Our
Judah,
pleasure.
Thank you. Liza's sleeping over there. Bones are on our way. But thank you very much. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you for joining us on Real Talk I Love Seville show in 61 minutes. Take care, guys. Nicely done, Keith.
Yes, sir.
Judah, good job.